Welcome to Higher Ed Athletics, presented by Pilotics. Tom Theodorakis. Tom, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Travis, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So I understand that from your press conference, you could also be called Theo or AD31, right? So
Yes, sir. I've been called a lot worse. So yeah.
Okay. Well, do people actually call you AD31 when you're at the academy?
They do. You'd be surprised. So
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, to start out, I just wanted kind of to hear from you about what it's like actually walking around West Point, and if you ever pinch yourself when you're walking around base, because I am reading the Washington biography right now, and I'm mixing it. I just finished most of the John Adams biography, and they talk about West Point quite a bit. And I honestly, my father-in-law was a history teacher, so he'd be upset if he heard this. I didn't really understand the significance of West Point for the American Revolution, but it's now we think of it as just where we train our soldiers, and it is. But it's got to be incredible to just wake up every day being the AD at Army.
Travis, it is. You're exactly right. I mean, our nation's history is here. Actually, right outside my office, outside these windows, you can actually see where George Washington pointed and said, "That's where we're going to build West Point." So, there are daily reminders of how special this institution is and what it means to America and what it represents and what it produces. So, for me to be in this role, to have a part of that, that's something I don't take that for granted.
Special. Well, I know you've also been at some other places, and you've been asked about this in previous interviews, but you really do have this perspective from being at Army, but you also were at Harvard, you were at Arizona, you were at UCLA, you were at Air Force. With everything going on in college athletics right now, you all are supposed to collaborate, you athletic directors, as leaders of college athletics. What type of perspective does that give you that anyone watching this or listening, they know exactly how different these institutions are? I imagine that comes with quite the different perspective.
It does. Travis, I make the joke. I like to work at places that I couldn't get into as an undergrad. So, no, I think in all seriousness, it's been very beneficial. I've been able to work at all different types of institutions and across the country too, right? So, for me, that's been an opportunity just to see what success looks like, at each level, at different institutions, and maybe more importantly, what success doesn't look like. So for me, it's just helped with my perspective as we talk about, what does college athletics mean holistically, what it means at different levels. I think I've benefited from seeing it viewed in different ways and the impact in different ways. And I think it's helped me in my journey here to West Point to see, what does success look like within the gates here and outside the gates. And I think that's something that is truly, I think, whether it's within our team here or, talking collaboratively across, the industry of how can we continue to get better? What are ways that we can better work together and make sure that we're providing the best opportunity for our student athletes and our cadet athletes.
Yeah, I usually interview places that I could never ever get into or work at. So
Same.
I actually I think I probably made that joke with Aaron McDermott. So Aaron was on the podcast when it was really early in
there you go.
Actually during COVID, and so we had such a limited time together because she had to go try and solve tons of problems about COVID at Harvard. What was it like specifically working with Aaron? Because she came from a small D3 school, University of Chicago, a lot of academic prestige, and then goes to Harvard with a huge athletic department, huge, obviously just probably the most historic campus. What was it like working with Aaron? What did you learn from her at Harvard?
I mean, Erin's a pioneer, right? What she's been able to do in her career. I'm just so fortunate to be able to absorb that, to be a sponge around her, to see how she leads. And she's done just so many impactful things throughout her career, not just as a student athlete, but her time at Princeton, Chicago, and at Harvard. I feel very lucky to have been in her circle and been able to learn from her. But I'd also say even Greg Byrne, who was at Arizona when I was there, and
also been on the pod.
There you go. So I'm glad to learn that I'm like at the bottom of the list here, but you have a lot of great people in front of me, which rightfully so.
Well, I usually have a rule that I try to wait almost a year until someone's
Yes.
been the AD before I
Yeah.
ask them. I also joke I've only had one deputy AD on, and then shortly after, Brian Blair became the AD at Toledo.
There
So,
you
I had nothing to do with that, but yeah, I try to usually wait like a year. And
go.
Harvard, similar to Army, two of the places that going back to the start of the show, it's just a place where I would love to visit one day. I've got to
Mhm.
get I got to just get to the campus, or an Army Navy game would be the thing that everyone wants to go to, right? But now I'm reading about the history of George Washington and our country. I feel like I got to come visit.
Travis, we make the joke, right? You're a taxpayer, right?
I am, yes.
Yes.
For
So
anyone, yes, I pay my taxes.
you're invested in this place. Okay. So you should see what this place produces, what it represents, what it looks like. And I feel like there's a reason why Mikey Stadium in Army West Point is listed as oftentimes as a top 10 venue to watch a college football game because it's everything from before the game to during the game to after the game of the pomp and circumstance, the march on, the flyovers, the jumpers, the cannons, things exploding. We have a lot of fun here. You should come see it.
Things exploding. Yes, that does sound fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the former president at Coastal Carolina, when I had him on, he said he thanked me as well for visiting because he said they have a penny sales tax. He's like, you came here. I bet you bought gas or you got food or something. You
That's
helped
good.
us build that indoor football facility. I was like, you are welcome, sir.
That's
Uh,
great.
so that's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the first year to second year transition. So I've talked about this jump with other people. I think everyone I've talked to about that first year, it's like, okay, I went from the deputy to now I'm actually like I give input. Now I make decisions and I lead. Which you
Mhm.
lead as a deputy, but the final buck ends with you for decisions with athletics. What was it like that first year? After your AD had left and you kind of took into that role, and then what is like on the horizon that you're trying to accomplish in year two?
Well, Travis, I survived, so that's goal number one, right?
You made it
Uh,
to year two, so
no, I think. Listen, I think each situation is unique and different. I walked into a situation that was not a rebuild, to be candid with you. Mike Buddy, even before him, Boo Corrigan, Kevin Anderson. There's been a long lineage here of just tremendous athletic directors, and we all stand on the shoulders of giants. And they've done some amazing things to put this institution on a path for success. So Mike Buddy really had, a lot of things going in the right direction. And, so this wasn't a rebuild. So for me, it was, I just want to make sure we keep marching forward. And, it's very easy to do that when you have amazing coaches and you have amazing administrators who are bought in, who understand the alignment of this institution. So for me, it was, let's continue to just keep moving in that same direction. We have such a wonderful senior staff, exec staff, all of our staff here that are really perform at such a high level that make my job very easy. So it's the idea was, especially year one, let's just continue to move forward. We did have a strategic plan in place, Travis, which is kind of always has been our roadmap the last couple of years. So for us, it was just let's continue to do this, right, and let's just continue to elevate what we can and try to make ourselves better, enhance the way we're doing things. So this past year, I've been very fortunate to in a lot of ways, just I think continue what we're doing, but in some ways elevate the experience up and down, left and right.
what are some of the key initiatives that you all are trying to do with your strategic plan?
Yeah. So listen, I think it's just rooted in all of our decision making, right? So we just at least want to have boundaries and say, listen, how do we evaluate ourselves after every single year? So what are our KPIs? When are things we're not sure about? Or should we do this or should we not? Is it rooted in our mission or values and with the institution? So we often refer to it in almost everything we do. Is it in the strategic plan? Is it aligned with our strategic plan? Is this something that we should be investing in? And I think that's been extremely helpful. So in this past year, it's ultimately rooted in the cadet athlete experience, and I think that's something that across whatever team you're on, you're a part of. Everyone feels a part of what this overall plan is and how they have an impact on the cadet athletes.
Yeah, and I imagine with everything going on with like rosters being year to year and it's almost got to keep this nostalgia at places like Army, where you might not necessarily have a completely new roster every year with your like football and basketball team too. It's that probably helps a little bit with that culture and that strategic plan.
It does. I think one of the benefits in this world of college athletics, yeah, so we don't have NIL here at West Point. The transfer portal is mostly one way. So I think that's, we've challenged our coaches and our staff to think that way, right? So this is an opportunity for us to actually, you can build a culture, you can build a team. Those are things that you can have cohesion. And that's one of the areas that we're going to continue to rely on. And if you look at our success the last 2 years, especially, I think it's really kind of almost been our secret sauce to having success, whether it's the Patriot League or whether it's football or across all of our sports, to have success where, our team photo looks very similar every single year, and you look at that with other institutions, it's not that case. And when you talk to other ADs or other coaches, it's wonderful that culture when people are leaving. So I think, again, rather than look at what we don't have here at West Point, I think it's important to focus on what we do have, and that's certainly one of those areas.
Before we get back to the show, I want to tell you about a new partnership I have with Onrise. So for those that aren't aware, first 10 years of my career, I was actually a student athlete academic advisor. Mental health concerns and the betterment of student athletes has always been top of mind. So finding a partner with the podcast, where I don't really get to talk about that part of my life as much, has been really helpful to kind of just showcase the great support that you can get. If you support student athletes, you know that mental health resources can be hard to implement, even harder to scale. Onrise provides complete mental health coverage, but built specifically for your athletes. With one call, programs can launch same-day access to peer support from retired athletes, licensed clinicians, and 24/7 crisis care. It costs less than hiring one full-time staff member, with no hiring hassles and no initiative fatigue for your department. To learn more, visit Onrise.CARE. That's ONRISE.CARE. Now let's get back to the interview.
Yeah, and I want to switch to the Army Navy game, which is something that everyone loves. Michael Kelly made news of leaving USF to go to Navy, and he's been on the podcast before too. It's at some point maybe we'll get his perspective of Army Navy, but having been there as the AD, as a deputy AD, I knew you were on the steering committee. I wasn't surprised to read that there is like the steering committee that goes on to it. We're used to cities preparing for hosting major events, not every year though necessarily in athletics. So what actually goes into the planning and consideration behind the scenes of a game as significant as the Army Navy game?
Travis, it's a lot. It takes a lot of bandwidth, and a lot of our staff members are invested in it 365 days out of the year. So it is. It's a game that has over 7 million viewers annually. That is an opportunity for us to showcase the academy and both academies, and do it in a way that accurately reflects our institution. And it has such an impact. Even from just a balance sheet for us. So, a couple of years ago, we decided to take this game on the road. So, it travels. So we right after we're done playing in Baltimore, for example, this past year, we're meeting with New York, New Jersey, and MetLife Stadium to say, how are we preparing for next year? So, for us, it's something we think about all year long, and how are we best, not only just executing the game, from a script perspective, but how do we continue to work through sponsorships? How do we continue to work through, logistics with our cadets and the brigade, and maximize this opportunity, because there's a lot of eyeballs on us. So, I think our staff does an amazing job. Yes, we have a steering committee, but it trickles down as well, constantly thinking about, hey, how do we continue to elevate the game? How do we operate in the best way possible and make it one of the most unique events in all of sports?
Yeah, were you? I don't know when that decision was made to kind of take it on the road. What kind of do you see the value in that? Similar to like the taxpayer thing, like you want everybody able to see this, or what was that kind of thought process like?
Yeah, so I do see value in it. I think the Northeast corridor makes sense, right? I think from a logistics standpoint, as far as our cadets getting there and the brigade getting there. So, that's important, number one. but I think it's given us the opportunity to kind of wave the flag in different areas, in areas that are important to us. So I'll use New England as an example. They did a tremendous job at Foxborough of embracing the game all week long, and that's everything from having debates during the week and incorporating a lot of institutional. It's not just an athletic department, a football game. There's a lot more tied to it, and I think they embraced the game in such a great way that, throughout the days even leading into it, there was everything from the Patriot games to the marathon team running in with the ball. There's a lot of different aspects to the game, and it really got us to show people in that area, whether from a recruiting perspective, hey, you know what, maybe Army West Point is an option for me, right? I'm into STEM, and then maybe people never thought about that as a potential option for them. So I think even for those that are veterans, an opportunity to play in front of them and to be around them, it's a great opportunity for us. So I think there is value in us, moving the game in these different pockets and different areas. I do think it has a huge recruiting advantage for us. Gets us in front of just different markets, which I think helps us a lot, and that's been beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. I mean, there's so much pride as hopefully with like every American when they're watching it that I also imagine that it is probably a really big recruiting. I'm not saying for athletics, but recruiting as far as for the country. I mean, that's got to be some type of responsibility when you see the superintendent, you see all the cadets, and you see the president showing up. I mean, that magnitude can't be understated.
You don't want to screw that up.
Yeah. Yeah, no pressure or anything for you, Tom. So speaking of that, like the night after you hosted your first one as AD, you're just like, all right, I think I made it. Like, what was your reaction like that night when you got home?
Well, listen, my hope is that we win, right? So,
yes.
It was tough. I was so proud of Coach Monken and the way our football team did play that day, and right till the end, we had an opportunity to win that football game, and I think it's emblematic, right, of what the game represents. You had two teams that were fighting hard, that going punch for punch, and I think that's what you expect out of the Army Navy game. But yeah, it was unique from my perspective, right? I think even from the deputy level, I was kind of in the X's and O's and involved in everything with the game, and a lot of boots on the ground type stuff, and actually being the AD a little bit, I was kind of removed, focusing on different things, but that doesn't mean it was less important, but kind of had different responsibilities. But no, it's certainly, that night and the next day, in some ways, yes, you're conflicted, right? Because you lost, but you're also like, wow, what a show. And to fill that stadium up, an NFL stadium, to have the president there, to have military leadership there, to have the cadets there, to wave the flag, to have that type of impact on the national landscape. I think a lot of people see, hey, these guys, they do it right. And I think to be a part of that is something really special.
Yeah, and I think you're. I've watched a couple interviews, long form with Coach Monken, and man, he really embodies what you want a head coach, but also at Army West Point. And when I saw the name Monken go into the Browns, I was like, oh my gosh! And I realized it was actually his cousin. I was like, okay. Right before I interview you, I was like, I hope he's not losing his coach. So, well, the last thing with the Army Navy is, how do you protect this date? The college football playoff, I feel like every year we're just waiting to the end of the playoff to see, okay, what are they going to do next year? And that constant evolving has to just, encroach on this magnificent date of the football calendar that as much as everyone hates the football calendar, I don't think people necessarily want to see Army Navy moved off to another date. I could make the pitch that July 2nd or July 4th would be pretty cool, but that'd be really early. But I think we should just leave it as is. But how do you kind of protect that moving forward? I know the president's weighed in as well.
Yeah, I would just say holistically, right? I think we just need to be prepared, and that's what we try to do in our athletic department. Whether it's protecting the Army Navy game in that date, in that time, in that window, but everything that's going on with college athletics right now, right? Like, we just need to be prepared, and how does it affect our institution? So I think, again, challenging our staff to say, what does the calendar look like? How do these new rules that go into affect our institution? Because, like you mentioned, we are unique, right? And, our summers look a lot different than other people's. They're in the woods, right? So there are things that we need to think about consistently. I just say over some of these, new legislature, new bylaws across this landscape that we need to think about constantly about how does it affect our department, and how do we continue to do our best and follow the mission of the United States Military Academy, which is developing leaders of character. That's what we do, and second lieutenants that are going to lead our nation's army. That's what we do. Now, we need to win, right? Like, that's not mutually exclusive. Like, winning matters here at West Point too. So we just need to constantly have that as our North Star. And so, yes, protecting the Army Navy game is important to our department. And we're lucky to have really great partners in helping us do that. Like, Tim Pernetti is one of the best commissioners in college football. I wholeheartedly believe that because he's engaged, and he listens. And I think that's one of the best things you can do as a commissioner. We're very fortunate to have him in our corner, where he understands the value of the Army Navy game. He understands the value of each institution. And he's there as a partner, with us, so he's there to help advocate. He's there to help support us. So as we go through these different things with college football and what the calendar looks like, I'm very fortunate to have a commissioner who's by our side to talk to me, to talk to our superintendent, to say, hey, this is what I'm hearing, or this is what's going on, and how can we do our best to preserve what's right. And oftentimes that is the Army Navy game or Army football.
Yeah, your commissioner is definitely out there a lot, talking about the brand. And I, at some point, would probably request to have him on here, but I listen to and watch everything he does. And yes, he represents the league, because I've interviewed quite a few. I've talked to a lot of people, ADs in your league, and I get that feeling every time I hear him talk. And knowing his background, I'm sure that helps with something like the Army Navy game that's going to be nationally televised all the time as well. The collaboration at West Point is what I want to talk about next. And so I like to talk about, in my doctorate program, I really try to study organizational structures. And so I'm always thinking athletic department structures. And as I enter the dissertation phase, I'm even more focused on people's institutional setups. I imagine, so we're used to like the AD sits on the president's cabinet, and we understand like institutional politics and how a board of trustees works. Just kind of curious. I know you have a superintendent, not a president of your campus. What's that structure look like of collaboration between the athletic department and really where you all fit in and embedded into West Point?
You're telling me most ADs don't report to a 3-star general?
I don't think so. They might. Maybe I think Texas A&M used to, maybe.
No, I think you ask a really great question. And I will tell you, I actually think that's what makes Army West Point so special. College athletics, I would say athletics as a whole, and being an athlete, every cadet is an athlete here. So whether 25% of the core cadets, so our student body, is NCAA athletes. So think about that, right? That means something to our institution. And so on top of that, every cadet, so if you're not an NCAA athlete, you have to play either a club sport or participate in intramurals. So when you look at our institution as a whole, it's a pillar. Athletics is a pillar in what we do. So I'm very fortunate to sit on our board of directors. So that is our superintendent, that's our dean, and that's our commandant. So when you talk about alignment and you talk about does athletics matter? Do people see the value in athletics? I think especially here at West Point, the answer is yes. Because it's a quote from General MacArthur years ago, and it's still applicable today. And it's upon the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds that upon other fields and other days will bear the fruits of victory. Meaning that the lessons learned on the fields going on right now with our athletes, it's going to really get them to learn and develop skill sets that are going to help them on other fields on other days, right? So they are going to be leading our nation's army. So to go back to the point earlier, like we want to win, right? It's important to develop that muscle now while you're here, to be in tough situations, right? To overcome, to have grit, to put yourself in tough situations, to really learn, these types of skills that are only going to help you as you continue to be a second lieutenant and a leader in our Army. So very fortunate to be in an instance in a structure that is extremely values what we do, and values the impact that we have. Now that doesn't mean we cut corners, right? So like there's no online classes here. Like so everything we do is has to be in concert with each other. So I think I'm very fortunate to really have a group of individuals, leadership that I get to work with that we're all working together to be on the same page and holistically to have excellence in each one of these areas, whether it's the military, whether it's in the classroom, or whether it's within athletics.
Is there like a athletic academic center, or is it just you are a cadet and you have the same resources that everyone else has, more like a Division III setup?
There is what we call it CEP, but yes, there is an area for us to have academic services. It doesn't report through us.
Okay.
It's done through the academy, but there is kind of a branch of that that's dedicated to have staff members for athletics. Yep.
I did not realize that every cadet had to do some type of sport. I mean, you hear a lot about like, oh, they're a boxer, like or something like that throughout history, but I guess I never realized that. And the high percentage that you have, that is borderline. Like you see like a 25% number at a small private like D3 campus. You don't see that at a military. I mean, maybe at the other military academies. I haven't had any on, but I mean, that is quite a bit of participation. I imagine that's great competition, leadership, but also victory, but also failure, right? And you can fail there, and that might have been back to the quote, from General MacArthur about preparing for battle too, maybe.
Exactly.
Well, I'm just so fascinated by this place. I really do have to get there at some point. And
see that was my goal from this podcast was
yes,
to get you over here. So I feel like
if I had unlimited
conversation for hours, that's the goal. Yeah.
If I had unlimited travel funds for this show, I would have rescheduled and just be like, let's just stop now and finish the interview. Right. So, well,
listen, I think you should. That'd be great.
Yeah, it would be awesome. And I will plan on it. So the doctorate in education leadership, and so I want to talk. I saw that you are pursuing a doctorate. That's something that if any AD I have on the podcast, like Danny White, Andrew Goodrich recently, we've talked about their doctorates, and I'm finally. I never thought I'd make it to the dissertation phase, but I as of a few weeks ago started my dissertation, and going through all of it, it is a grind whenever you're working. Now you are pursuing that, and I'm kind of just curious, like, why did you decide to do it? And then did you decide to start it before you were already on this path to become an AD? And then once you became the AD, I mean, I hope you're going to stick with it, but it ended up taking Danny, I think he said like 10 years to finish it because he became an AD during the doctorate program.
So me and Danny are on the same track.
Okay.
I think it was for me. I believe in higher education, and I've always loved that aspect of it. I love learning, and the idea that I can complement what I'm doing, from my job to what I'm reading in the text, and make it applicable. Like that's exciting for me. So the opportunity to do it at the University of Arizona, I finished all my classwork. So similar to you, I'm actually at the doctorate phase, the dissertation phase. So. Yeah, no, I think, listen, it's always helped complement the work I do. I see tremendous value in it. I did not realize, though, as I went through the program, what would happen in life, and life happens. And so for me, very fortunate to just, I was able to kind of take on some new roles and eventually become the AD here at West Point, where I hate to say my priorities shifted a little bit, but they did. And listen, as much as the doctorate's important to me and my family, my parents are very good about reminding me to get it done. Listen, I'll get to it eventually. I need to, but a lot of life has happened during that process. But it has shifted for me. I think I want to do it here at West Point and focus on West Point. So I've actually been able to engage with a lot of our staff here, a lot of our professors here, to say, how do we lean at, not necessarily from the student veteran standpoint, but now focusing on leadership, focusing on, how that looks over time here at West Point. So that's what I'm excited about, and I'm excited to get back into it. I need to.
Yeah, and I thought I saw the description of your dissertation. That's what I was going to ask about, the idea behind the topic. So it is more military student experience driven, right?
Yeah, it is 100%.
Yeah, I mean, you're better than me. I would have just stopped the doctorate when I was at Harvard, and I would have just tried to take whatever classes Mark Zuckerberg took at Harvard. Just joking, but I would have tried to. I did think, I do tell people
Yeah.
if you are working at a campus and you think you're going to be there, however long, I don't think enough people they think they get that master's degree earlier in our careers, right? Where we're all like grad assistants most of the time, which you're so focused on the grad assistant part that sometimes you're just going through through the master's program. I really challenged myself when I was at IU to do a doctorate in higher education instead of athletics. And I tell people, is like, if you're at a campus and you get tuition reimbursement, for example, try to challenge yourself to take a program there while you're an employee,
Mhm.
and just do something there. And so, you could have done that anywhere. I think it's awesome that you ended up sticking with Arizona for your doctorate, but mine's at IU, and I'm excited to finish it. But yeah, I think it's great when you see leaders like yourself that still value that part of it,
Yeah.
because I think it started with Kevin White when I had him on to talk about his book, recapping kind of his career in college athletics. And he always taught, and he really pursued that doctorate early on in his career. And that's like why Andrew Goodrich, probably why his son, it's part of whenever he's helping them map out their plan, that doctorate degree or an advanced degree is actually a part of his plan. So I think it's
Great.
awesome that you're doing that. So. Well, to end the conversation, I do just want to. There's only one rule here about the advice question. You can't just say work hard in your main job, because I hope that's a given to everybody that watches or listens. I had to shift it around because that got answered so much. I'm just trying to, for aspiring ADs, or I don't think everybody necessarily wants to be an AD. Some are aspiring to be a deputy. Some want to be a senior associate AD in their certain area. What advice would you have on them to lead them with, kind of embarking on, looking back at your career?
Yeah. So I think for me, um, a lot of it's rooted in getting out of my comfort zone. And what does that mean, right? I think it's such a competitive industry. And for me, I had grown the most and been put in situations when I got out of my comfort zone. That's everything from, leaving New York State, where I went to school, I grew up, and moving out west. And you can still have the goal to move back to the East Coast. I did, but that took me 15 years to do. But I think I would challenge individuals. It's one of the beautiful things about college athletics is you get to work at some amazing campuses. So as you progress, I'd just say don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone in the sense of, look at opportunities at places maybe you never thought you'd live, or institutions that you'd ever be a part of. And if you ever told me I lived in Tucson, Arizona in my life, I would have laughed at you when I was, you told me back when I was in high school. But, it was one of the best decisions I ever made, because I got linked up with an individual, as we mentioned, Greg Byrne, who really taught me how to become an AD, taught me a lot. And I learned more from being around him in 5 years than I ever could have in really, I think, any other environment. So to that point as well, I'd also say follow the people. Sometimes it's really easy to follow, hey, I want to be at this level or this brand of institution, which is important. But I'd also say make sure you look at and follow the individuals that are a part of it. So facilities get old real quick, right? But what doesn't is the people that are inside those buildings. So I think as people start evaluating, hey, what do jobs look like, or is this a great opportunity? Really focus on the individuals who are in those buildings that are going to be providing you with guidance, mentorship, that are going to be leading. And I think I'm in this position today because I got to work with Aaron McDermott and Dan Guerrero and Greg Byrne, and all of them. And where I'm at right now, I've taken pieces from each one of them of how they operate and how they lead, and that's only helped me have a better perspective, especially in this industry.
Well, Tom Theodorakis, Theo AD31, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about Army West Point. It's a privilege to be able to have someone from your institution represented on the podcast. It means a lot. Very much respect for how you go about your job every day and the importance that your role plays on that campus and for our country. So thank you for being on Higher Ed Athletics.
Thank you, Travis. Be Navy.